After dominating the 3D printing landscape for over 2 years by not only delivering reliable machines that just work, but I'd argue more importantly to their success, delivered a streamlined user experience, we've all wondered what comes next. What is the next big innovation in 3D printing? And is it going to be Bambu again who delivers it? Now, we all wanted a bigger machine, which, yeah, we kind of got here, but I think we also all expected them to have something else up their sleeve. In Apple speak, we anticipated their version of just one more thing. But as many now know, this more, this extra beyond the new size, is essentially the delivery of some multi-function Frankenprinter. It prints, it slices, it dices, draws, or at least it would with all the add-ons, but as just the larger Bambu printer we all wanted, I'm not so sure we actually got that. And with me being a reviewer that focuses on practical user experience over tech specs, this should be my wheelhouse. It should be, but honestly, I'm a bit bewildered by this one. So hi, I'm Ross, this is FauxHammer Videos, and at this point I think I'm becoming a semi-professional pessimist. The short version is I'm going to call it as I see it. I've seen a lot of talk and videos about the H2D, and there's no doubt about it, it's an amazing piece of kit, but the second I saw it when watching a reveal video from the amazing 3D printing nerd Joel, I instantly assumed, yeah, Bambu have jumped the shark on this one, and I hope the thumbnail makes sense now. If not, what I mean is, have Bambu run out of creative ways to push FDM printing forward? So instead of just giving us a bigger X1, they've done anything to stand out from an ever-copying and ever-cheapifying crowd. And now that I've used this for over a month, almost non-stop, almost literally non-stop, like I paused it before recording this and it'll go back to printing as soon as I'm done, but in all that time, I'm not massively deterred from that initial assumption. So here is everything wrong with the H2D, along with a few other fun observations to be aware of. First off, this is heavy. The combo box, which includes the AMS2, is 42 kilos. The printer alone is 31. So unlike other printers, where I've actually risked my spine or the onset of a hernia to get these things onto my desk, I took absolutely no risks with this one. Make no mistake, lifting it is a two-person job unless you're a professional weightlifter. Thankfully, there are 2 deliberate grab handles in the base. And could I also kindly request some polite comments offering a round of applause to Mrs. Hammer here? She did this in recovery from a frozen shoulder, and she doesn't like being on camera. Now this is a very nice looking machine. It's not my favourite, I've told you what my favourite is before, but I have to say I actually do prefer the grey plastic to the X1's aluminium. However, as I always say, design is a personal preference. It once again has a glass door and a lid, but this time it's got 2 side windows with a large one on the right and a small one on the left. And whilst I do like the addition of the light up Bambu Lab logos, I can't help but feel this very sexy embellishment is one we didn't quite need, especially if that could have shaved some of this unit's significant price tag off. And I think that price tag is going to be the main kicker. Whether this is worth it to you is going to be a very personal thing. I can't really comment because yes, I'm in the privileged position of getting printers for free, including this one. So thank you to Bambu for sending it to me for review. But I think as you're about to see, these words are very much my own. But yeah, this one is stomach-turningly expensive and released right as our US viewers have to deal with the inclusion of import taxes. And as a 40-year-old Brit, all I can say is, yeah, it sucks, doesn't it? Back to the printer, and semi-related to value, I think there are a few elements in this that we're getting charged for that many of us may never need. For example, the port for the emergency stop, along with the button on the top right corner, are completely redundant without the laser module or the laser upgrade. Now, there's a 6-pin port in the back to connect up an AMS or a chain of AMS units, but there's also 2 4-pin connectors like the ones from the A1, and these aren't for the AMS Lite. The AMS Lite isn't compatible with these printers, just like it wasn't with the X and P series. So one of these ports is also needed for the laser functionality, and the other is reserved for a potential future add-on, probably the same add-on we're still waiting for on any of the A1s. And now that I say that, watch them go and release something in like a week or a month from now and make me look stupid for whinging about this. If they do, call me out on it in the comments so I can update the video description, and also any revisions to this review will be posted there. Now, I do personally have some interest in this laser module, and I'm actually getting my hands on a LumiTool F28 soon for review, just so I can practice with one in preparation for hopefully getting a H2D-L at some point. But with all the ports on the machine, the one they've neglected to give us is an Ethernet port, which I've got to say is a massive disappointment. Another disappointment for me is the exclusion of an SD card slot, which is now replaced with a USB socket for pen drives. Now, yeah, on first glance, this is a handy location for accessibility for what I suspect are a very small minority of Bambu users. I think for the majority of people still looking to invest in the Bambu ecosystem, we'll just use Wi-Fi. At least then we can have access to all the remote printing and monitoring, including a live view of the machine thanks to the built-in camera and the Handy app. And I say people willing to invest because, yes, I'm aware of the lockdown since the last firmware update to the X1. If you want my opinion on that, I don't think it'll add value, so I'll just say check out the sensible look at the Bambu Labs drama video from Teaching Tech, because my opinion is exactly what he said. Anyway, USB port. Whilst this is handier for physical file transfer than an SD card, having a drive sticking out here, which you need to do in order to record things like time lapses, is a lot less discreet, and it can get in the way of removing the lid, especially when it's mounted in places like racking, such as I have it. I'm genuinely worried I'm going to accidentally break this socket at some point. And I honestly want to know, am I alone in this whinge? Are you happy they changed it to USB, or would you rather they stuck with SD cards? Because I'm in the latter camp on that one, and for the price of this, they could have given us both. But I'm not just here to shit on Bambu, this is an objective view at the printer. There are a ton of features I love. There's fixes for a lot of annoyances from the P1 and X1 range, whilst at the same time, it's taken on some of the upgrades we also saw in the A1 series. And this prints every material I threw at it like an absolute dream. I'll show more of this later, but if you need any solid validation of that statement now before we continue, Aurora Tech. I rest my case. So here's the things I do like. I love the mechanical vents on the top and on the rear. No longer do I need to take off the top glass when printing PLA, and this massively helps to dampen any mechanical noises when printing. And I also love that the printer has a big chamber heater in the back, which helps to start warming the chamber faster when printing materials like ABS, which I actually bothered to do on this printer because, well, I needed some dry boxes that wouldn't melt or warp like my old ones did when using the AMS's heater to dehumidify them. And daftly, I ended up printing the ones for the old AMS first, so I ended up having to print another set for the new AMS. Whoops, it's not my biggest mistake, and you'll know that if you've followed this channel for a while. Anyway, I'll come back to talking about the hardware of the AMS2 itself as a separate device, but another critique I do have is the seemingly arbitrary limit on how you actually connect these and how many you can connect. Now, the actual connection is simple. From the 6-pin port in the back, you just connect up your first AMS unit, and then that connects to the next one, and you daisy chain all the rest in sequence. And this printer has 2 nozzles, and on the back of the printer is 2 PTFE inlet tubes. But we'll come on to the dual nozzle thing in a bit. To connect the actual PTFE tubes, if you're using multiple AMS units, you can either have 1 AMS to each tube, or if you're having more AMS units, then you need to use these couplers that they released for the A1 range. But the older hubs will work if you've got some of those spare. Now, when it's connected, the printer will actually feed filament through each one sequentially and automatically detect which unit goes to which nozzle. And it is the simple shit like this which demonstrates only the Bambu level of engineering that keeps them well ahead of the curve. Other companies do not do this stuff to help you out. Unless somebody like Bambu has done it first, nobody even bothers to do these convenience things. And this is just one of countless conveniences with this printer. But again, we're talking about the negative stuff. So you've got this weird limit of 4 AMS or AMS2s, not 4 of each. You can mix and match the new or the old ones, but the limit is 4 maximum. And then after that, you can connect up to 8 of the new little AMS HTs, and that gives you a maximum load of 24 individual reels of filament at once. Now, they say 25 if you include the external spool holder, like anybody's doing that. It is an awkward limit on a system that we've come to expect has few limits. With Bambu, if you assume the printer can do it, It typically does, but not here. I know the idea of 8 AMS units and 32 colours is likely to be beyond overkill, but some people out there are going to want to do this just for the sake of it, and surely Bambu should be doing it just for the flex that you can. Anyway, I tried my printer first by using the external spool holder, which I'm happy to see just press fits onto the back without screws, and it leaves both the real and PTFE tube easily accessible from the left hand side. I also attached the new AMS2 to the other nozzle, but then I moved on to attach my old original AMS to the other nozzle, giving me 8 colours across 2 nozzles. And I've said a few times that I am not the biggest fan of multicolour prints due to the waste of both time and material, but there is a key reason I like the 2 AMS setup here, which I feel really should be a standard combo offering from Bambu, but I'll come back to why after I talk about my absolute biggest gripe with this printer. And if you've already seen reviews on this machine, you can probably guess what it is. Yeah, it's the bloody build plate. If you don't already know, the build volume of this machine is advertised as being 350 by 320 by 325. Now, Bambu were one of the first to give us a nice sensible cubed volume on all of their printers and lock that down as a standard across all but one in the range. We now have a printer where no axis is equal to another, except when it is. So the 350 on the x-axis, that's across left to right, is actually only 325mm per nozzle. So the left nozzle can access 325mm from the left side of the plate, and the right nozzle can access 325mm from the right, meaning the true printable area for both nozzles, which is, you're going to want to use both, that's why you've bought a printer with 2 nozzles, but that's only 300mm. That's what you're going to be squeezing everything into most of the time, just to avoid the awkward limits beyond this. There's workarounds, but I don't want to do workarounds. Like, if you want to have the same colour over the full width, you can do it, but you need 2 reels of the same filament, and you need to piss about in the slicer, awkwardly colouring in the part that crosses beyond the limit, or in the middle or something, which unfortunately then results in extended print times, only a bit, but it does extend them for nozzle switches, and it also causes seams between the 2 nozzle joins, and in my case it wasn't the strongest join. I expect there are better and stronger ways to do this rather than just painting a straight line like I did, but this is something that I think Bambu needs to work out for us, because that kind of is what Bambu do most of the time. It's weird that they haven't done it here yet. I expect this is coming, but when? So whilst I love dual nozzle, and I really do love dual nozzle, I'll talk about why in a minute, after a few weeks of use, I'm still not sure that I love it enough to have to deal with this amount of kerfuffle. Now, Bambu do a decent enough job in the slicer of at least informing you of these limits and not slicing outside of the boundaries, but I just don't like having such a powerful product being given all of this build space with such obvious limits. It's like being served 5 desserts after dinner, but being told I can only eat 4 unless I sit on the other side of the table for the last one. And I'm sure that's not just me, so can I at least get a hell yeah in the comments for anyone who agrees with this? It seriously pisses me off. Like, honestly, couldn't Bambu have just made this printer a couple of centimeters larger in each direction just to give us a consistent volume and hit that 350mm we all wanted, if not expected, especially since there's other machines on the market that have given us that for a lot less money. Now, sure, they aren't Bambu quality machines and don't have that user experience, but I genuinely expect Bambu will lose sales to their competitors because this is now comparably smaller and comparably more awkward. Would anyone really have complained if this printer was just a little bit larger? Now, speaking of the dimensions of the unit, there's so much plastic in here. I've praised other machines for being more open internally because the one problem I see with maintenance is lubricating lead screws. There's a text guide online, but I'd really love a video explaining how I'm meant to get my hand in here to access the screw right at the back in order to thoroughly clean it and re-grease it. But at least the hot ends once again got a removable faceplate for easy access, and I'm so happy to see the nozzle style from the A1 has now come to the H2D. This is so easy to just magnetically mount or unmount a nozzle, so playing around with different sizes is far easier than it has been before. And right now you do need to have matching nozzles on each side, but Bambu have confirmed they are working on asymmetrical configurations. And I absolutely love the idea of having a big nozzle for fast printing, but switch to a smaller one for detail. I think this really opens the door to improving print quality whilst maintaining reasonable print times. That, in my opinion, really does have the potential to be the next big innovation in printing. Yeah, we've had dual colour before, but dual nozzles of different sizes, I'd like to see where this goes more than anything. Now, I was talking about dual nozzle and why I love it. What I like most right now is having a nozzle for PLA and a nozzle for a dedicated support material, so PVA. And the difference on the underside of supported models versus models without a support interface is night and day. I honestly don't think I can go back to a single nozzle setup now. And if you're doing this specifically, or maybe dual colour, like 2 colours only, to give an idea of the time this saves, I sliced up this Doom the Dark Ages helmet a few ways. You can do this yourself in the slicer with your own models if you want to see the difference. It's free, download the slicer and have a play. But this helmet, without a support interface, would have taken 2 days and 4 hours. To add these interface layers only added an extra 4 hours. That's only an 8% increase in time. And with no wasted material being flushed between layers. Now, yes, you've still got a purge tower, but I'm going to figure out how to make this smaller. I've done it before, I just forgot to do it here. Now, if I'd wanted to do this same thing on a single nozzle, it would have taken more than 3 days with 16 hours spent flushing nearly half a reel of filament. So there's your impact right there. And just for fun, I also sliced up this helmet to see the impact if I printed it in full colour. And yeah, I'm not printing this, I'll stick with the grey one and just paint it, because painting things is my hobby. It's not the printers, it's the things I do with the prints afterwards. And I also think that's the majority of people who are watching my videos. But speaking of multicolour, what I love with this dual nozzle setup goes back to the slicer. You see, when you slice multicolour prints, the slicer actually defaults to filament saving mode and tells you where, like in which AMS, you should put each colour material in order to save both time and material during the print. Now you can, of course, and I have a few times, switch to convenience mode where it just lets you leave all the reels where they are in the different AMS units, and that's if you prefer to just not get off your arse and move things around. But speaking of the AMS, or now the AMS2 Pro, which is an interesting name, right? Why is it both 2 and Pro? Are we expecting an AMS2 non-Pro? If so, I suspect they're going to ditch the heating element, which I've got to say is incredibly handy. If you've got older filament that could have just become damp, stick it in your AMS, tell the printer to dry it, and it'll actually walk you through the process. But this does take hours and is typically going to be an overnight job. When you start it, the 2 vents on the AMS will open to push air through the system of what is typically a sealed chamber, and that is so you can get the moisture out, because they're right in what they said. If you just heat up a sealed chamber, that will just warm the moisture in the air, it won't release it. And whilst the printer will monitor moisture level, I'd recommend printing some of these desiccant bead holders and sticking a hydrometer in it. At least then it'll keep your filament drier longer in the AMS, and I'll put a link to these and the desiccant in the description because I got asked about them loads in a previous video. But I've got to be honest, the actual models themselves, there's a ton of designs of AMS dry boxes on MakerWorld. This new AMS now gives us much better access to the internal PTFE tubes, which will massively help when unclogging blockages in there. And the thing I need to point out in terms of usability is that everything is connected via accessible push-fit connectors. And this also extends to the printer too, unlike the X&P series where we needed to print a variety of special tools just so we can get tubes disconnected. We can finally get immediate access to these components, because boy was that old way frustrating. I've really not got much to pick apart with the AMS2, it's a solid upgrade all round. One thing to be aware of is that if you are using the heating function, only the first AMS2 in your chain will be powered from the printer. If you get multiple AMS2s, you need a separate power supply in order to enable the heating function. The one thing people will want to know is that it's still not any more compatible with cardboard spools, but this gives me a chance to show you a trick I've been using, because I've been buying these rolls of Elegoo Black PLA in boxes of 10, because when you buy it that way, it is super cheap, and it works great with the generic PLA profile on most machines. But with these, you can carefully, and I mean carefully, tear away the side of the spools, pull out the inner ring, and the plastic bamboo spools fit perfectly. The notch on the bamboo spool actually fits perfectly where the Elegoo spool holds the back end of its reel too, although sometimes with encouragement. So if you like the idea of this and saving some money, and you'll probably need to save some money when buying a printer this expensive, I'll add a link to these filaments in the description too. But I'm sure it'll work with other cardboard spools. You're just going to have to do it at your own risk. If you get it wrong, you're going to be manually winding an entire spool. So yeah, I've got a lot of negative stuff to say about the H2D, and if you want to add to it with your thoughts, then please let me know of any other issues or anything you think I've missed down in the comments. But overall, my conclusion, I still love it, guys. I still love it. It is my favorite printer ever, because whilst I already have bigger printers, what I don't have is bigger Bambu printers. And that Bambu name means something. Because despite all of these very valid issues I've pointed out, Bambu are still very much in a league of their own. Yes, that build plate is an awkward volume. I'm not going to let them off for that. I think it's stupid. But the slicer does make it clear what the limits are. I am disappointed that this isn't dual nozzle and 350mm cubed, and I'm also disappointed for any future Bambu machines, which is probably going to be a H2 basic of some kind, that will naturally adopt this awkward shape that is smaller than the competition. And whilst this isn't the 350mm I wanted, well, I wanted 350 because other machines have 350, but honestly, when I come to use it, I can still print most of the things I want as a single object. Specifically, I can now print these prop helmets and with a support interface really fast, which means far less processing work for me afterwards. So despite its flaws, this is still the printer I choose because of how it works and what it does. And I've said numerous times that I think user experience is far more important than raw hardware. It's why Apple still have so much of a market share for phones. Now I have to caveat, because I'm really starting to learn just how much my personal opinion can have an intrinsic effect on influencing viewers. I don't want you to watch my videos and buy any printer because it's the one I would choose. I hope you've looked through the video, seen what you're getting, at least now understand what to expect, and can make an informed decision about whether the features of this or any printer is something you want to pay its price for. And I honestly think using Apple as an analogy when comparing Bambu to other machines is one that's becoming more and more accurate. Both are more the restricted platform, but as history has taught us, the more restricted platforms are typically the more user-friendly. But what I want from my machines is very specifically exactly what Bambu sell. And we all think what they sell is printers, right? But no. Yes, we buy printers, but that's not what they sell. What they sell is convenience. Now, for farms and businesses who just want bigger printers, there are printers out there for that. In my opinion, this isn't it. This is too expensive. It's not open source, it's not configurable, it's got no fleet management, it's a bit more restricted now with some third-party tools not wanting to integrate with this ecosystem. It doesn't even natively have the ability to queue up print jobs. And there's no friggin' Ethernet port. But all of this for me echoes the exact antithesis of what I said in my Prusa Core 1 video, which you should definitely check out. There are two types of 3D printer user, as I've said. There's the people who like to tinker with printers and get into the technology and see where it's going, and then there's the people who, like me, just want an appliance to do other things. Bambu have clearly picked their lane. This echoes Bambu's direction, a direction they've been going since the A1s came out. All of the user interface and workflow just clearly isn't designed or delivered with that in mind. This is clearly a multifunctional creative tool, and I think very specifically for individual home users, people like me whose interest is in 3D printing stuff for their hobbies, not people whose hobby is 3D printers. Having things like Maker's World with all its models and ready-to-print profiles on different machines, Maker's Supplier where you can buy the hardware to make functional prints easily, and all with links to the correct filaments to use to match colours. That growing list of makeable projects is absolutely awesome, and I actually printed my wife a Cogsworth clock and my kids a card shuffler for our weekly Uno games, and I also printed some Uno boxes for those games. Oh, and by the way, this is an aside, just a tip, Uno Flip, absolutely amazing. No Mercy, fucking brutal. You've got to try them both if you like Uno, and I'll put links in the description. Anyway, all of this stuff and the accessibility of it is amazing. I even printed TPU shoes. Now, screw the H2D, this is the future right here. And before anyone says it, yes, I'm an overweight, grey-haired 40-year-old man, and I will look daft in these. But this whole channel is my midlife crisis. I passed looking stupid long ago. But yeah, even with TPU, the printer will actually tell you to read a detailed guide the first time you try and print with it so that you don't mess it up, because TPU can be an absolute at the best of times. And I know a lot of people are watching this going, but you can do that on other printers a lot cheaper. Yes, of course you can do all this cheaper. And you only need to spend a little time looking for the individual parts, sourcing filaments, and getting machine usage support through online communities rather than having the baseline support from the brand to build from. Or you can pay the premium for the convenience that Bambu are selling. And if people weren't willing to pay thousands just for the sake of convenience, we'd all be riding the bus. So this is a bigger Bambu. It's not the bigger Bambu I wanted. I don't think it's the bigger Bambu any of us wanted, but it is a bigger Bambu. And the dual nozzle is fucking awesome. All printers should have dual nozzles going forward. So if you watch this, if you're prepared for it, if you can afford it, if you want to buy what I personally would say is the new absolute all-round best, most high-tech printer on the market, I'll drop an affiliate link below the video. I will make a commission on that at no cost to you. That's how I can afford to run this channel. If you did make it this far, I want to say well done. This is one of my longer videos, but it's also a lot of printer, and I mostly covered the negative side. There's a lot more I can say about it. If you want more videos, if you've got questions, let me know down in the comments. But I want to finish by reminding you to answer the question, there are two types of printer owners. What do we call them to make it easier? I want to say thanks for watching, with a huge thanks going to our members who are on screen now. Please consider joining them. You'll get your name in lights, Discord roles, and exclusive videos along with early access. You know the spiel. Like, comment, subscribe. Shut up, Ross. Until next time, milk was a bad choice. FauxHammer out.